那我们就准点开始。Good afternoon, good evening, from Beijing, or hello everyone around the world. Welcome to our event. Actually, this is one of the events of a series of books titled "Visualizing Dunhuang: The Lo Archive Photographs of the Moga and Yulin Caves," supported by the Town Center for East Asian Art, Princeton University, and published by the Princeton University Press. The topic of today would be the study of Dunhuang, or Dunhuangology in a globalized perspective. And we're very happy to have two guests for today. One will be Professor Lin Wei-Cheng, Associate Professor of Chinese Art and Architecture from University of Chicago. Professor Lin specializes in the history of Chinese architecture with a focus on medieval periods. His primary interests of research are visual and material cultural issues in Buddhist art and architecture and China's funerary practice through history. He is the author of Building a Sacred Mountain, the Buddhist Architecture of China's Mount Wutai, published by the University of Washington Press in 2014. This hasn't been translated into Chinese, right, Professor Lin? No, not yet. Okay, we'll expect that in the near future. He has additionally published on a variety of topics, including collecting history, photography, and architecture, historiography of Chinese architectural history, and contemporary Chinese art. So a very wide variety. So now let's pass the podium to Professor Lin.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for Professor Liu for. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen first. So and then I will go on. Okay. All right. So can you see the screen now? Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So well, thanks for having me. And it's a great pleasure to be part of the event that celebrates the publication of the monumental it's really a monumental publication of the Lo Archive photographs of Moyang and Yulin caves. And this is indeed a monumental achievement that will benefit many scholars and students alike for generations to come. And the University of Chicago actually purchased a set of the photos, I think early 2000 or something, when I was still a grad student there. And I remember to have flipped through the photos, one by one for my research, and then was really amazed by the scope and details of the photographs. And then, but by then, most of the photos in the archive were now cataloged, and so some of the images, like the one on the screen, I can recognize, or this one, but most of the others cannot really be identified without doing some further research. So really, thanks to Lucy Liu and Princeton University, as well as the Dunhuang Academy of Research, that finally we have a set of publications that dates and then and catalogs every photo with additional cave information. And I think we just begin to discover or uncover the significance and value of the Lo Archive photographs. And I believe we should see more and more research inspired by the Lo Archive, and hopefully also by the publication in the future. And my talk today is actually a shorter version of a paper, and which is a contribution to the collection of essays that is included in the volume 9 of the publication. I hope last week Dora from Princeton University has introduced the content of the 9 volumes to you. But if you And then, but if you are interested, actually, they also publish a separate volume just for the collection of the essays. And so in a collection of the essays, many of the essays are now really related to the photographs, and which is also the case of my paper today. And then we actually took cue from the theme visualizing Dunhuang and then write about the art of Dunhuang, basically. So my paper is a consideration. Today is a, let me see if I can get. So my paper is a reconsideration of what we study with cave architecture. And then, like I say, it's really in response to the theme of the publication called Visualizing Dunhuang. Okay, so let me start. So for scholars of Chinese architectural history, sorry, I prepared a script, so I think I'm gonna just do a very American way. I'm gonna just read the draft, the script for about 25, hopefully no more than 30 minutes, and then we can open up the floor for more discussion. Okay, so for scholars of Chinese architectural history, studying the architecture of Buddhist caves proves to be rather tricky. It is not because of how the caves is constructed. Compared with the regular buildings such as timber frame architecture, the cave structure is much simpler and its construction is more straightforward, whether it is because of what to study. So on the screen to your right, there's a timber frame structure. So to study timber frame structure, we study how the structure was built and then how the weight can be supported and then the interior can be opened up. But the cave architecture doesn't really talk about those. So like I say, it's more straightforward and then simpler to some extent. So typically, studying the architecture of Dunhuang caves concerns the typology of the cave interior based on its shape and structure, or 洞窟形制 in Chinese. In this regard, the cave typology in Dunhuang will include colossal Buddha caves, 大象窟, Nirvana caves, 涅盘窟, Vihara caves, 讲堂窟, and also central column caves, 中心柱窟, gable roofed caves, 人字波窟, funnel caves, 覆斗顶窟, and central order caves, 中心坛窟. While only a few caves were built in the first three types on top, each for a specific purpose, the majority of image caves in Dunhuang were built in the last four types throughout nearly 1,000 years of the site's construction. In this line of inquiry, cave architecture, or 石窟建筑, unlike regular architecture, is not so much about how it is built as what type of space it creates. Buddhist caves built by digging into the mountain or cliff surface, in a sense, are chiefly an architecture of interior. Many scholars believe cave builders and patrons decided what cave type to construct based on what iconography, including both the two-dimensional murals and three-dimensional statues, goes into it. The study of cave architecture, therefore, revolves around the essential issues. That is, in what ways the cave could help structure iconography with its walls, niches, altars, ceilings, etc. That is, its architecture that defines the type of cave space. In this paper, I contend that the cave typology actually limits rather than helps the iconography program inside the cave. Think about this. Digging into the cliff surface, in theory, one could build the Buddhist caves in any shape and size if needed. However, the fact that nearly 500 image caves in the southern section of the Mogao site that contains varied iconographical program were built in only a few cave types undermines any proposed connections between the cave space and its iconography. Instead of fixing our sight on the cave's physical shape and space, it is my contention today in this presentation that cave architecture should be studied, focusing on the ways in which architecture can be considered as integral of the iconographical ensemble inside the cave, a critical role that enables architecture to be part of rather than separate from the religious visualization performed by the practitioner at the caves in Dunhuang. So this is my first section. By and large, scholars agree that each of the cave types just discussed can be traced back to its earlier precedents in India, Central Asia, or elsewhere in China, suggesting an origin of each cave type other than itself. For example, some scholars speculate that the upturned funnel caves or Fudodingku, the most long-standing cave type in Dunhuang, may have derived from contemporary tomb of the same region, such as the front chamber of Dingjiazha tomb number 5, dated to 4th and 5th century in Jiuquan, China. The depiction of the celestial realm on the ceiling and the comparable mural arrangement in both cave and the burial chamber might have led cave builders to adopt the burial architecture. The shape of the burial chamber thus was borrowed to structure the iconography of the image cave, which likewise has its visual program culminating at the ceiling. So you can see, the both on both ceilings, and also the kind of the registered arrangement of the iconography are rather similar to each other. So, however, this association between cave type and iconography observed here cannot be easily verified. Let's look elsewhere in the Mogao site for a moment. Of the 248 caves in the northern section, Mogao Beiqu, only 4 built with any Buddhist icons and murals. So most of the caves in the northern section were built without icons and murals. And many of those caves without images, such as this one, were also constructed in the shape of an upturned funnel, similar to those caves of the southern sections. So without iconography, the northern cave on your right likely was used for meditation or as a communal residence. One also finds the caves in the northern section built with a gable and flat roof that resembles the style of early central column caves minus central column. This non-image cave in the middle is also closely related to the gable roof cave on your right of the southern section, discounting the niche on the west wall. So if you look at the cave type right here, this is from the northern cave without images, but the roof style and then the space, the space shape. So if you look at either side of this, the 2 caves right here, so without considering the central column or without considering the niche right here, all three type of caves are very similar to each other. So in terms of cave architecture, the shared typology among caves with and without Buddhist caves in Mogao seems to suggest a dissociation rather than connection between the cave typology and iconography. So quick research on each cave type's earliest and latest appearances is also revealing. The central column cave unquestionably was the most important cave type in Mogao during the 5th and 6th century. The gable roof cave, first seen in the early 6th century during the Northern Wei, appears to be a variation of the central column cave and a transition into the upturned cave. The upturned funnel cave first appeared around the mid-6th century and went on to become the most popular and long-standing cave type. And finally, the central altar cave was the cave type built most during the 9th and 10th centuries. So it appears all four major cave types on the screen were each more popularly built in one period than others, perhaps in order to accommodate certain rituals or iconographical program. Yeah, for example, the central altar cave type made its debut already by the end of the 6th century with cave 305. So in other words, all the four major cave types had all been built by the end of the 6th century before the Tang Dynasty in Mogao. So if you count this one, the last one, it's actually the very, very first example of the central altar cave. All four major types were available or had been built already before the 7th century, that is before the Tang Dynasty. So, and though some cave types were more popular than others in specific periods, all major types continued to be constructed even after going out of fashion. So early on, we talked about the central column caves were most probably built during the 4th and 5th century. But again, later on, for example, the cave number 9, close to the 9th century, also was built in the central column caves. So some of the caves were built popular at one point and became out of fashion, but later on they will continue to be built here and there. So in a long history of Mogao sites, in other words, cave builders had the entire spectrum of the cave typology at their disposal. As time went on, the continuous construction of caves in Mogao also meant a living building tradition in that later builders will have had all previous caves as a reference to choose from or model after. Still, it may be difficult to decide how a given cave type started and why it became current and when. But from preceding discussion, it is more certain that cave typology evolved in greater autonomy outside the concern of iconography. If all the above sound plausible, then what exactly does cave architecture study after its typology? A topic that may get us too far beyond the taxonomy. My answer is there's still plenty to study if we consider architecture to mean something more than the physical space and structure. As for the cave interior, I will argue we need to approach it not from the perspective of taxonomy, but from a viewer. As discussed earlier, image caves in Mogao to a certain degree share some architectural characteristics with burial chambers and even more with non-image caves in the northern section of the Mogao site. But there is one critical difference. Neither of the two comparable structures entails a perceiving subject in ways the image cave does. Put more explicitly, the unfolding of iconography inside the image cave was conceived and devised to meet the viewer's eye as he or she walks into the cave. Cave 254, one of the best known caves from the early period, is a central column cave. Entering the cave, one proceeds to circumambulate around the central column, installed with Buddha statues inside the niches on its 4 sides. Many early Buddhist caves in the Hexi region were also built with a central column, such as those in Wenshusan. Yet, unlike the Wenshusan cave, the column in Mogao Cave 254 is not located at the center. So you can see right here, the Wenshusan is actually right here in the center, but Cave 254, the central column is not located at the center. So in fact, Cave 254 doesn't privilege the circumambulatory route, rather the changing of the seating height that architecturally divides the cave into the front and rear 2 spatial units predominates the cave space. So if you look at this right here, the Wenshusan, the cave's seating height is the same. Here you have the unequal seating height that divides architecturally the entire cave into the front and then rear, the 2 spatial units. So the combination of the two spatial units encourages instead an east and west actual entry by which the practitioner meets face to face not only the cross-angle Buddha on the front side of the central column, but also the so-called white robe Buddha or Baifo on the rear wall. Though the identity of the white robe Buddha is still under debate, I'm concerned less with its identity than its location at the end of the actual entry that draws the viewer horizontally until one reaches its end. Entering the cave as such is not unlike visualizing the Buddha or Guanfo in meditation, such as that described in the ocean-like Samadhi of Buddha Visualization Sutra or Guanfo Sanmei Haijing, where one sees the number of Buddhas doubles, triples, quadruples, and so on, until, I quote, the room is completely filled with Buddha images without gap, unquote. 一室内满中佛像，见无空缺. So there are 14 central column eaves in Mogao from this early period, and the fact that all the 14 eaves were built in the same architectural layout, 5 of which include the white-robed Buddha on the west wall is telling. This lack of architectural variation and the fact that only a few cave types were constructed in Dunhuang would have produced a consistent knowledge of the cave space that decided how iconography was to be experienced and its religious significance perceived and understood. Any alteration, major or minor, of the cave architecture would thus give rise to different experiences and thus understandings of the cave space. Therefore, any alteration should be considered indicative of changes in iconographical program and consequently its meanings. So, for example, these are the major types in the early periods of Dunhuang history. So if you look at these two types, for example, the gable roof is the front, the gable roof is in the back. But what I'm arguing is that even the slightly minor alteration of the caves, then the meaning of iconography could be changed, and then the significance could have been perceived differently as well. So, and then to demonstrate this, in the next section, I'm going to focus on the upturned funnel cave, the Fudodian Ku, for my discussion. So the rising popularity of the upturned funnel cave from the early Tang essentially altered the viewer's perception of the cave space. Without the central column, one gains an uninterrupted perspective into the cave. And yet, more than the visual, the east and west axis extended further into the niche on the west wall would have continued to draw the visitor physically closer to the group of icons inside the niche. As seen in the example of cave 45, the cave chamber and the niche are joined seamlessly at a point where the practitioner comes face to face with the Buddha. So if you can consider this as two units right here, one is the cave chamber, the other one is cave niche. So since these two spaces join together without any particular separation, so it has this kind of continuous space extension from the cave chamber into the niche. An interesting development of the upturned funnel cave is the appearance of the so-called Zhang Shinkan right here, referring to its western niche taking a new shape that resembles a tent from the late 8th century onwards. Compared with the niche in cave 45 that we just saw simply as an extension of the cave, the tent-shaped niche, Zhang Shinkan, appears as a separate spatial unit or a small cave inside a cave. In cave 361, for example, the niche on the west wall is further painted with decorative motif that dress up the niche into, more specifically, the canopy tent or douzhang, often used to enshrine the main deity in the temple or transport it. So the niche, imagined as such, seems to have become an add-on from the rear that opens to the cave chamber. So this douzhang really makes like this is like the niche like a small cave inside a cave. So in this diagram, I want to say that you can almost imagine that this douzhang cave, the niche, is like something add-on from the behind and then opens up into the cave space. The main cave space right here in the middle, moreover, is also meant to be imagined as something else. In addition to the sutra painting or Jinbian Tu that depict esoteric topics on the north and south walls, the cave space has an overall esoteric implication in its vertical elevation. In fact, the cave seems elevated even higher at 3.5 meters with a sunken ceiling, which together with the four sloping sides is meant to be a mandala. It's meant to be seen as a mandala. So here is the view that you look up to the ceiling. So you see on the side is a niche on the west side and the entrance on the east side, and then that's the four sloping, the roof, and then the central sunken well that you can see. On the ceiling, images of 12 devas or 12天 indicate here by the orange dots, representing and guarding the 10 directions, and the sun and moon occupy the sunken well, which is surrounded by the 4 directional Buddhas or Sifangfu on the 4 sitting slopes. And either the 12 devas or the 4 directional Buddhas structure the cave's chamber religiously into a center of the sacred room, a position taken by none other than the Vairochana Buddha. So, however, no image of the Vairochana has been found in the cave. That's the reason why I put a little question mark right here, because there's no Vairochana image found in the cave. And in her study, Zhao Xiaoxing from the Dunhuang Academy of Research has proposed that the now missing central icon inside the niche might well have been the Vairochana. And this proposal is convincing and supported especially by the same four directional Buddhas, Sifangfo, whose images also appeared on the niche's four sitting slopes, attending from above the supreme deity represented by the now missing central icon. So taken together, so if I can come back to this image, taken together, this missing image right here should be Vairochana. So this is a little model I'm showing you right here. So here inside there is a Vairochana Buddha, and here's a four directional Buddhas on the sitting, on the four sides of the sitting. And then here also on the four sides of the sitting have the same four directional Buddhas. So, so they're taken together, I suggest that the niche as a canopy tent or dozhang would need to be conceptually carried into the central position inside the cave. And as one walks around the cave to observe the sutra painting on the walls, one could imagine or visualize himself or oneself encircling around the Vairochana Buddha, who could rise vertically and reach the sitting to complete and enact the mandalic power embedded in the iconography of the cave. To some, this spatial and religious imagination and visualization that transform the physical cave architecture may be too far-fetched. Yet I will argue this is precisely what cave architecture in Dunhuang does to help its practitioner visualize a transcendent world otherwise unattainable outside the cave. A late 9th century study at Mogao written by Zhang Huaisheng described the vision to which the cave aspired in these words, and I quote, "A cubic chamber encompasses all the 10 directions within. A cave appears as though it includes the entire triple worlds inside," end quote. So, 方太室内画尽十方，一窟之中宛然三界. So when I say what the cave architecture does, I don't mean the cave actually does something actively. Rather, I mean to stress the participatory role of the cave architecture together with iconography in giving rise to specific visions, such as those described in the passages on the screen. In short, cave architecture in Dunhuang is not about what it is, but what the cave aspires to. My last example is Cave 61, which is a central order cave built in the mid-10th century, specifically dedicated to the cult of Manjushri among Wutai or Wutai Shan Wenshu Xingyang in the Dunhuang region. One of the largest caves in Mogao, the cave is identified as Hall of Manjushri or Wenshu Tang by a 10th century text, which is further confirmed by the cave's expansive mural on the rear wall that depicts a panorama of Mount Wutai, and which is highlighted on the screen, transforming the cave into a virtual mountain. As I have discussed this cave elsewhere in much greater detail, here I will only focus on how the cave architecture works to realize the virtual mountain. As one enters the cave, the east and west axis of one's entry brings one to the group of now missing statues on the altar, but one's eyes stops at the massive screen wall that joins the back of the altar on the back of the altar and the seating before the mural on the west wall. So you're coming from here, and then you see this the altar. Initially on top of this altar should be the image of Manjushri riding a lion attended by the other attendants. So because the central altar right here, and then you will follow this circumambulatory route, encircling around the central altar. So prompted by the screen wall, but the screen wall right here kind of blocked the view from seeing the mural the mural in the back. So prompted by the screen wall that partially hinders the view of the mural, one could not but walk around the equally massive altar while the details of the Western mural begin to come into view. Yeah, we should note that since the cave is situated deep into the cliff and accessed through a corridor about 9 meters long, the cave interior could not have been illuminated completely without modern lighting devices. So even if two light sources such as oil lamps were allowed, as recorded in the 10th century text, the mural on the rear wall could be seen only partially. So walking next to the mural and approaching the darker area behind the screen would have been like a process of journey. So as if one is exploring the sacred mountain, since we can't really see the detail of the mural so well, so I'm using this the line drawing right here, which is the line drawing of the mural on the west wall. So when you walk around the backside of the cave along the mural, it's almost like a journey you walk through, as if we are exploring the sacred mountain, along with pilgrims depicted in the mural, and through the mountain gate until reaching the center of the entire mural, where the triadic deities sit inside the monastery below the central peak. And after worshiping on one's knees, one then moves on and begins to descend while gradually walking out of the rear area and returning to the front. So you walk around this area, and then it's really dark, and then so that experience is really like exploring the sacred mountain, and slowly coming back to the front and see the statue of Manjushri riding a lion. So after the journey through the virtual sacred mountain, the sight of Manjushri on the altar riding his lion may now have a definite religious significance. It would appear like a vision of the Bodhisattva's manifestation that confirms one's faith and piety after making the pilgrimage through the sacred mountain or Mount Wutai inside the cave, a vision one could otherwise obtain only at the real sacred site. The experience of the cave's virtual mountain is visionary, but the cave architecture and its scale and space cause it to transpire, such that the level flow of the cave could aspire to the terrain of the sacred mountain, thus turning the entire cave, its architectural space, and the mural into a religious topography. Indeed, it is a sort of peripatetic vision of the Dunhuang caves, that is, a vision arising while walking, yet the vision would not have been attainable without the cave architecture as its framework of visualization. Okay, so here's my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lin. And we're very happy that the other guest speaker is already online with us, Ms. Maria Menshikova. Please allow me to introduce her before she gives us a talk. Ms. Menshikova is a Senior Fellow of the Orient Department of the State Hermitage Museum, a conservator of the collections of the Chinese applied art and jewelry and Dunhuang artifacts. She's a teacher, a historian, an art historian, an author of exhibitions and catalogs and multiple articles regarding Chinese and Oriental art collections. She's also an expert of the Ministry of Culture of Russia for the applied art, the Far East Asian art, and religions. And today she will introduce Dunhuang artifacts and documents collected in Russia and will address about their historical and academic importance. So here comes Ms. Menshikova. Please go on.
Thank you for inviting me for this conference and for the talk. I hope you can. Oh yes, can you see? You can see me, but can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
And now? No.
It's good now. It's good. It's
Yes.
good now. Yes.
Can you see? Okay.
Can
Yes.
you enlarge it?
I will try. What do I have to do to enlarge it? Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just don't read Russian. Well, actually, there's a
Russian, not Russian. What do I have to enlarge it? What do I have to do to enlarge it?
Do you see the 60% on the lower right corner of your screen?
Yes.
Just next to it, there's a little one, like a projector. Tap it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, like that. Now better?
No, actually,
No?
can you click the picture next to the 90% one? Yeah, that's the one, please.
Yes, can you see now? It's a little bit late. I don't know how it happens. Sorry.
Okay,
so
then
okay.
Just keep it that way. Thank you.
So I would like to do to speak about my opinion of the publication of this fantastic work, 9-volume book of the James Lo and Lucy Lo archives and photos of Dunhuang in the Yulin caves that were shot in 1943, 1944. I think it's extremely important, and well, if we go now to Dunhuang, we can see all these beautiful and fantastic things. But at the beginning, of course, but at that period in the 20th century, nothing like that could be seen. And well, I don't know if you can see it, properly. Can you see it properly? Because with me, it's a little bit, okay. So this is the beautiful view of the big temple in the center. But if we go back to the history of the 20th century, we can say that at different stages, the photographs of Dunhuang had been shot, and we can remember that the first photographs were done in 1907, 1908 by the expedition of Paul Pilliot, and thanks to French Academy, it was published, and we know that the photographs were done by Charles Noet. Then in 1908, expedition of Sir Orlstein, I don't know, but they of course had the photographer with them, but seems not everything is known or published yet. 1914-15 expedition of Russians led by academician Sergei Oldenburg, and he had professional photographers with him. It was Dudin, Samuel Dudin, and he left earlier, and then in 1915 it was Boris Romberg who was shooting the pictures. So in 1920s, 1940s, from time to time, we can see some photographs of this period, but we don't know exactly who did them, and not everything, of course, is published. And this collection of photos, around 3,000, that were done by James Lo, and I think with the help of Lucy and other people, they are extremely important because they show, of course, how the caves and facade of the building looked like at that period. And later, Dunhuang Academy and contemporary travelers, of course, are making the photos. So it is also very important. But I would like to go back to the earlier publications. And so we can see that at the beginning of the century and in 1940s, the cliff looked like that. It was dilapidated, and the walls or entrances were of the caves were ruined. And well, it was quite difficult for the explorers and travelers to climb. We can see that they used the staircases, and they had to climb over the cliff, really. So the photographs of Russian travelers, some of them are published, but not everything, but they are also very important for the comparison of how the people looked like, how the expedition looked like at that time, and also how the caves looked at that period. And I want to show you the photograph of these three people. So it's Oldenburg in the center, and this photographer Dudin, and he was at the same time not only the photographer, and he learned photography at the end of the 19th century, 1890s. But he was also the painter, and that was very important because, of course, photography at that time was black and white. And black and white photographs we see also in the Lo archives, but some images are very important. So I'm showing you some of them in black and white. It's a Russian photo. But what Dudin did, he made a lot of pictures of the caves and tried to follow exactly the colors and the outlines of the figures. And that helps us now as well. So very interesting picture of packing and loading of the material at the beginning of the 1915. So the expedition of Oldenburg had collected all the glass negatives and also some artifacts, and they were loaded on the camels and were brought to Russia. But I would like to remind you that it was the period of the First World War, and the artifacts and the packs traveled for a very long time. They arrived in St. Petersburg only in August or even later in September of 1915. And that was a long trip because of the war. I don't know who made this photograph, but I wanted to show it. I saw it in Dunhuang Academy when I was traveling last time there, and it was on view, but I think it's very interesting how the face and the head of the Buddha, of this big Buddha, and was open to the air, and also how look the facade of the cliff and of the main temple. So we can say that it dilapidated from the 1910 because we have this photograph from Oldenburg expedition where we still can see the parts and balconies of this temple, and to the right is the contemporary view. What also Dunhuang Academy, Oldenburg expedition did, they did this fantastic map of the facade of the cliff, and they mapped all the caves and entrances to the caves on the cliff, and this is very important. And this map is 12 meters long, and it's published in the article in the 9th volume of the publication of Princeton publication. So comparing all what was possible to compare, and I give you some examples of comparison of the photos of different periods, including Lo Archive mainly. So I was studying some of the caves that were important for our collection. And I was surprised to find out that the photograph of the cave 139 or 321 that was examined by Oldenburg, and pictures were done, and even the animals, these our fantastic dog wolves sculptures were brought to Russia. I was surprised to find out that it was reconstructed already before 1940s, because again, this is the photo of the reconstruction of the cave and of the main niche. And this is the photograph, how it looks now. But I'm pointing that there are photographs published by Paul Pilliot, and these animals were still in the cave, and you can see them. But also the photograph was done by Oldenburg group, and you can see that the animals also were in situ, but no figures except for the main Buddha figure and the figure of the warrior. And so if we look attentively at this figure and at the photograph that was done by Lo, you can see that it's completely different. It's renovated and looks very modern, and has nothing to do with the original picture and with the way how it looked like in 1914. What is interesting, as I said, that Dudin was making the pictures of the wall painting murals and of this particular cave, and you can see that the nimbus and the ornaments of the niche were copied by him. And we know that Zhang Shinkan was trying to paint or overpaint the murals in Dunhuang. So Dudin was not destroying the original painting, but just was copying the images and the colors. So these are the images of the wolves, and we know that they are dated to the period of Wutai, and these are these sloppy animals that we could see already on the Lo photograph. And working with this material and going to Dunhuang, I was very lucky to travel to Dunhuang in 2017. I was able to make the photographs of other animals. For example, to the left, you can see the photograph of James Lo. So you can see it looks like other guardians, even photographed by Stein and Pilliot. But this one is repainted and renovated, and it's a completely Disneyland to my mind. Then I was able to make the photograph of this cave, and now looking and preparing this presentation, I found out that we have the photograph of the same cave in that was shot in 1914. So my photograph is 100 years later, and you can see that the sculptures are still here and practically not renovated. But for me, it was even more interesting to see this sculpture of the animal. And if we compare the photograph, to the right is the photograph from James Lo, and to the left is a contemporary photograph made by me. So you can see that the jaws are ruined, but still this is the same image, not renovated. Some elements of the pose are also ruined, and you can see the comparison of the photographs. So it's very important that this seems to be the only one sculpture of the animal guardian that exists now in the same way as it was at the beginning of the 20th century. So some other pictures, but you can see this is to the left is the image made by Lo, and to the right is the, well, I couldn't come closer. So this is some animal sitting sculpture also in one of the caves. Possibly it's the same one, but we can't be sure. If we go to another cave that is also important for us, for example, because of the collection that exists in the Hermitage, the cave number is 263. And so this is the photograph done by Piliot. And you can see that the wall is broken, so the cave is open to the air. But inside, the murals are still in situ. And if we look at the photograph of Lo, this is also very important, that the top top rows are of these sitting Buddhas, many Buddhas, thousand Buddhas. Then the row with the monks, and they date back to the 5th century. But the bottom row is of the officials, and these officials were painted much later in the 10th century. And so what we have in the museum, we have this fragment of the mural with apsaras and sitting Buddhas, and with the lower row of the monks. And this is my photograph, how the wall looks like now. So we have this empty place of the mural that dilapidated at the beginning of the century and was collected in fragments by Oldenburg and others. And so what we have now is the image of this, not only the 5th century fragment of the Buddhas and apsaras, but also these two figures of the officials, that these figures we can see at the bottom row, just at the floor. So this is in the center is my photograph. So we can compare and tell exactly where they were placed at the beginning, where they were painted at the beginning. So all this material, to my mind, and especially the Lo photographs of the middle of the 20th century, are extremely important, especially for the preparation of the exhibitions, for the study of the original murals and paintings and sculptures, and the location of the objects in the caves, and also for the reconstruction and restoration of the caves at the moment. So what I have done, I'm finishing, yes?
I'm sorry, can you let me remote control your screen? I'll just try to make it full screen. Can you accept my requirement?
But this is the last.
Oh, okay, all right. All right.
picture already.
Okay.
So
All right.
something wrong?
It's fine. Just go ahead.
So it's very important, as I said, for the contemporary exhibitions and exhibitions in the museums. So, for example, thanks to these photographs and thanks to the paintings that were done by Dudin or other travelers and specialists, it was possible, for example, to find the proper color for the background of the objects that are on display in our galleries at the moment. And also it was possible to date and to place them in the caves. So you can see one of the showing cases that is in the gallery of Dunhuang since 2013. And again, I can only repeat that the photographs of James Lo and the publication of all this material is extremely important for all our research, for the research of the people outside China and Dunhuang, and of course, particularly important for the reconstruction and study of the Dunhuang Academy and restorers from Getty Institute who are working at the moment in Dunhuang caves. And I would like to remind you that at the moment, maybe several years ago already, since 2016, the Dunhuang Academy was trying to do the full digitalization of Dunhuang caves. And well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank particularly Dr. Dora Ching for her work and for her efforts and editing of this material. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Menshikova. And it seems that we still have plenty of time for discussion. I noticed that we have some scholars, very senior scholars among us for tonight. We have Professor Peter Bo from Harvard University with us now. Professor Bo.
Yes, I am here.
but do you have any ideas to share with us?
But I am certainly not a Dunhuang expert by any means. I'm here because this is such an interesting presentation, and the series of photographs going back to the early 20th century is very valuable. But also, I was impressed by the question of the relationship between the structure and how one walks through it and the experience of it. So all of this was very good and useful, and I plan to make use of what I've learned in teaching when we very briefly talk about Dunhuang. But I do not have any expertise to raise questions, but I'm glad I was listening when you called on me. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Professor Bo. 我们的听众里边，如果大家还不知道，我刚才就是很随机的请了一下包必德老师，就是那个在网络上唱那个朝代歌的教授啊，可能说到这个大家就很知道了。我刚才好像看到 Professor Martin Powers, are you still there with us? Professor Powers, are you still with us?
Yes.
Would you please share some comments or questions, anything?
Well, just as Peter said, this isn't my field. I have no expertise in Buddhist studies. I would just say that I found Wei-Cheng's thesis very convincing and important. I guess I would ask just one thing. Of course, Professor Su Bai also approached the caves at Yungang from the point of view of their function. As you know, he broke them down into lecture caves and meditation caves and so on. And Wei-Cheng, I was just wondering if your theory replaces that, or if it's compatible. Again, as someone with no expertise, I have no idea.
Well, thanks, Marty. I don't think I'm proposing something to replace the kind of the good hard archaeological approach. I think it's still important. And then from the photo Maria just showed us, I think it's important to see how the structure was actually built, and then the relationship between the caves and all that. But I'm just kind of trying to see if there's another way that we can think about architecture, not just the building structure. And then in any case, unlike the regular temple structure where you do have a timber frame or whatever the materials that you want to use to build, and then you build a space and then people can travel into it. Because the regular building can function in so many different ways, but the cave basically is about, especially image caves, basically are about is a venue where the practitioners or worshippers will be able to see the images. So I think in this case, the architectural framework or this architectural frame cannot be just in the background as a backdrop. So it has to have some kind of more participatory kind of role to be part of this entire experience. So, and then I think what is quite unique to the Dunhuang case is that the site was used for so long, for about 1,000 years or so, continuously, right? So more or less, we begin to see a tradition, and this tradition is not, or convention. It's not just about the image or about the cave type, but also the spatial knowledge that the builders and the visitors will share. So when they enter, the people in Dunhuang, when they enter the cave, they will recognize it. They will know, okay, so this is what kind of cave, what I should we tour around that. So that's the kind of dimension of architecture I want to uncover, and something that oftentimes we don't really pay much attention, since when we look at images, and you look at images, sculpture, you look at sculptures, and architecture historians just look at the shape of the cave. So hopefully we'll be able to bring this all together. And then the other thing I feel quite strongly about today's presentation from Maria especially is that we're talking about the Dunhuang as a living tradition. So the caves continue to be rebuilt, kind of restored, renovated, not just in the modern time, early 20th century, but also, you went all the way back to, I believe, in the Tang Dynasty or even the Xixia period, when the caves were altered in one way or the other. So to me, the question will be, what does that mean? Will that affect the ways in which the iconography was perceived, and how the meaning of iconography could have been changed over time? So, but thank you, Marty. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that Dr. Dora Jing is also online. Dr. Jing, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, first of all, Wei and Maria, thank you very much for participating. And Wei did remind me that actually last time I did not introduce the content to volume 9, which is the essay volume. So I'll take this opportunity to do that. The theme that I had chosen very early on was visualizing Dunhuang, because I had looked at it, and piggybacking on what Wei just said, is that the caves were built, rebuilt, furbished, changed. Some later dynasties took over earlier caves and reformatted them. And so our idea for the essay volume was essentially to give an example, to show people through the Lo Archive, but also other photographs and other research and scholarship, how one could study Dunhuang, and one could visualize it in many different ways. And so the book is divided into 3 sections. The first section is really about archives and photographs. And the second section is about the land and the caves and architecture. And the third section is really art historical studies. And for that section, we had 3 essays. One took a few motifs across Dunhuang and across Central Asia and traced it across geography and time. Another essay dealt with one cave in particular, so pinpointing one specific study. And then there's an art historical essay, which is about how Dunhuang and the study of Dunhuang and photographs contributed to the study of Chinese art history. So this is volume 9, which, as Wei also said, is sold separately as a separate volume. And we are contemplating producing a Chinese language edition of the essay volume. We're still figuring out how that can be done, but that is something that we are considering.
Thank you, Dr. Jing, for your comments and complimentary words. I think we still have time. I think I'd like to open to the public. So any questions from our audiences to our 2 speakers or our scholars online tonight? If you prefer to, please type your questions in Chinese and I'll translate it for you. Okay, so here I saw a question. Someone typed, Annie Liu typed a question. She's wondering, what do you think contributed to the popularity of the unturned funnel cave starting from the Tang Dynasty? How did the cave builders decide which type of cave to apply? In other words, what are the implications of each type of cave? I think this question is for Professor Lin.
Well, thank you for the question. I think, there's a couple of research that has been done already, I think, by Chinese scholars about, the rise of the upturned funnel cave type, the footholding cave. So I don't think there's a certain or a specific kind of conclusion that we have reached already as to the reason why, it became popular. And then so I don't want to, I don't think, this is a right time to get into the more details, but of course, this kind of the upturned funnel, the cave shape is this kind of shape of the chamber is not specific for the Buddhist caves. So I think, it's worth looking into some other resources or some other the possible candidates for the origin of this cave. And then in my paper, I talked about, for example, the Dinjiazha, the tomb chamber that was also used in the very similar kind of the cave type. So as far as like why it became the most popular, I don't know. I think that's something that we all need to think about, like why this upturned funnel cave type was used so extensively, and then also in terms of time period, crossing from the 6th century all the way through the 10th and 11th century in Dunhuang. So I don't know why it is so popular. And then I think that's something that we all need to think about. One of the points that I want to articulate in a presentation is that a lot of times we think about the iconography and the building, they kind of came together just automatically. But in fact, a lot of times it's really because the convention, so the certain the cave type or the cave shape was used, and then the builders try to fit the iconography into the cave itself. So I think, rather than picking thinking about the iconographical program and pick a right cave type, sometimes the sequence might have been reversed. So they start with a cave type and then think about how I'm gonna decorate the entire cave interior. So again, I don't really have a particular answer. The reason why certain type of caves were chosen, a certain moment for certain particular iconography or ritual. So that will be a good topic for research in the future. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? You don't? Or do we have any other scholars online who want to say something? Either in Chinese or English would be fine. All right. I think it's big. It's actually it's very late here now in Beijing. People are sleepy. So I think why we just stop right here, and we may have some other time to communicate with each other, especially when this pandemic is over. Thank you all very much. Thanks to Professor Lin and thanks to Ms. Menshikova. Thank you for your wonderful speaks. And thank you all the audience for participate in tonight's event. I'll see you later.
Thank you so much. Thank you.